As a parent, are you lost when it comes to video games and the effects that they could be having on your kids? Well, I've made this Parents Primer video to give you a guide on some of the basics. So sit back, grab a drink, and let me take you through Video Games 101. Hello and welcome to today's video. Before we get started, please remember that if you find anything in this video helpful or you just want to show the love, please feel free to share the video on social media and maybe even like the video here or maybe even subscribe to the channel. It helps us out a great deal, and if this is successful, I might find the time to do another like in the future. Now listen, here's a disclaimer. I'm a 38-year-old man who has quite literally grown up with video games. I love them, always have. From the age of the home computer in the 80s to today's global gaming industry worth billions of dollars, I've been a constant consumer, and for the last 3 years I've been making videos on video games and the industry here on Overbite Gaming. The thing is, when a form of art turns into an industry, there comes a host of challenges. Believe me, I am definitely no expert in this. In fact, on this channel we usually review games and act like idiots for people's entertainment, but today I wanted to give something back. I wanted to share some knowledge that might help parents make video games more of an understandable and relatable hobby that your kids enjoy, while being aware of the digital age that we live in. I work in an office, and with a number of parents who were kind enough to answer some questions around gaming that I thought might draw out some concerns that people generally have when it comes to video games. Now, being an old fart at 38, this biggest distinction between folks around my age and the kids of today is that youngsters are born into a world prevalent of advanced digital media, meaning they haven't had the same chance to grow up organically with video games like I and many of my friends have. In 30 years, we've gone from Pong to photorealistic narratives and immersive storytelling. That doesn't come without a price. First of all, the sheer gargantuan amount of money involved in video games might make it easier to see why they're so pervasive in our society and ultimately so well loved. In 2018, it's estimated that the games industry was worth nearly $138 billion and forecast to grow to just over $180 billion in 2021. Not only just selling products can create this multi-billion-dollar industry, esports, the professional leagues in which players can compete in televised or broadcast events to achieve serious prize money of up to 7 figures. It was estimated that in 2018, the global esports economy will grow to just under $905 million. Over the year, 380 million of us were watching and paying people to play games competitively for a living. Madness, even for me. But this isn't just a stats video, but that number makes the idea of little Jimmy's hobby up in his bedroom more than just a waste of time. For me, video games can easily be put into two main categories, AAA and indie. To use a cinema analogy, AAA games are your big blockbusters made for cash, and indie games are your art house cinema that not many people go and see, but some do, and they all love them. Both have a place in the world, but equally both have their own pros and cons. The sheer investment into a AAA game can be astounding. For example, Grand Theft Auto 5, a game in which you control 3 characters of dubious law-abiding sensibilities, or driving, shooting and robbing banks in gorgeous environments, had a budget of $265 million. It went on to make the developers Rockstar Games $1 billion in its first 3 days. For perspective, Avatar, the blue alien blockbuster from James Cameron, cost $237 million to make and only went on to make a measly $241.6 million after 5 days. Historically, over the last 30 years or so, video games have been portrayed as the latest bogeyman and sordid, even a satanic influence on our kids. It happens to every media. Rock music had it in the 50s and video games have had it since, pretty much. While there have been many studies done on the influence and correlation of video game violence on real-world violence, there have been none to date that prove shooting zombies in a game or killing soldiers in a World War II setting will cause a human to go out and commit an act of violence. Now, I'm not a scientist, so rather than make this about my opinion, I'll just state the case that no link has ever been proven to date. What's nice to hear, however, is that there are a number of studies that actually show a positive impact on the human brain that can range from stress, depression and anxiety relief, improved decision-making skills, problem solving, education, pro-social behaviour, physical rehabilitation and business skills, and not to mention the usual one of hand-eye coordination. Of course, being sat in front of a screen for hours on end isn't necessarily that good for you, especially as lots of us spend our days in an office as adults sat in front of one 5 days a week. But in moderation, video games can still be part of a healthy lifestyle for adults and children. I'm not going to insult your intelligence by assuming that you don't know about being on the internet, and that games allow players to team up or play against each other from all corners of the globe, if a globe had corners. This is also fundamentally not specifically where the risks lie. Popular games with children at the time of making this video like Fortnite, Roblox, Minecraft all carry an additional word of warning. As they're very popular with children, paedophiles and people that might want to hurt your little ones also know that these are popular with children. This is why it's so important for you as a parent to engage with your children about playing games online and teach them about how to spot the warning signs so they don't fall prey to a person trying to groom them for a video game when all they want to do is just play with their friends. Here are some basic examples that my 100% totally scientific survey of my co-workers uncovered for practices that help them manage this potential hazard. Number 1, don't speak to strangers. It's an old rule, we all know it, but it's still the backbone of safety online. Number 2, keep consoles and PCs in a public area of the home. This lets you see and hear what they're doing when they're playing games. Number 3, be aware of behavioural changes. Any sudden secrecy or becoming more introverted could be a sign that something just isn't right. And lastly, number 4, most important of all, please talk to your children about the dangers and educate them. Let them know they can come and talk to you if something bothers them. I want to talk quickly about rating systems. All video games are subject to review by a board before they can go on sale, and these differ from country to country. When rating content for video games, there are 2 main systems I want to cover here as they're most familiar to me, although there are others, so please see the link in the description for the specific governing body for your country. In Europe, PEGI, or the Pan-European Game Information System, is used. PEGI is composed of 5 age categories and 7 content descriptors that advise the suitability and content of a game for a certain age range based on the game's content. It does not indicate the difficulty of the game or the skill required to play it. In the USA, Canada and Mexico, the ESRB, or the Entertainment Software Ratings Board, is the rating of choice, which acts much like PEGI by assigning ratings to games by age based on their content. These rating systems can only ever be a guide, but I believe that what you expose your children to is your choice as a parent, but it can help you identify games that might not be appropriate for them. Link in the description. While playing games can easily be a solitary pastime for many of us, or engaging in gameplay across the internet with friends, there is another side to gaming to be aware of: streaming. Streaming is the act of broadcasting yourself on the internet in real time, usually with a webcam pointed at the broadcaster to show reactions and give them the ability to converse with the viewers via an associated chat box. But who would watch anyone else play a game, I hear you cry? Well, the popularity of sites like Twitch have people with full-time jobs streaming video games, some even with a 6-figure salary for their efforts. Of course, kids look up to these folks playing video games for a living. It also makes a ton of them try to emulate them. Who wouldn't want to be famous and rich? There are age limits imposed on streaming accounts, but these are still open to teenagers. You may have had film stars and footballers as your idols in your youth. Well, these days, gamers can draw equivalent adoration, status, and financial reward. Just look at me. Okay, alright, bad example. You may have heard terms like swatting as well in the media or from friends. Swatting is when someone finds out a streamer's address, calls the police with a fake tip-off about a violent crime happening, like a murder or a rape, which causes then the aforementioned streamer's front door to be kicked in and an armed policeman pointing a gun to the streamer's head just for laughs. Of course, this practice is clearly dangerous, and while usually something that happens to streamers with larger audiences, it remains a risk of streaming online, so just be aware if your kids want to stream. Now, there's a general understanding that too much of a good thing is bad for you. This is true for video games. The management of your child's playtime is incredibly important. There have been many stories in the media of people wearing adult nappies so they don't lose time in a video game on toilet breaks, or sadly even dying due to forgetting to eat or drink. Well, I think you'd be able to spot these behaviours in your children. Video games can be very addictive at times, so much so that in September 2018 the World Health Organization classified a gaming disorder by an impaired control over gaming, increased priority given to gaming over other activities to the extent that gaming takes precedence over other interests and daily activities. Before you all tell me to go and see a doctor right away, which is probably not a bad idea to be fair, this is an actual thing. So it's worth being aware of it. Simple as that. Anyway, applying this to your kids isn't that difficult if you can dictate some rules and boundaries. Kids should be playing with their friends, yeah, of course, but not at the expense of their studies at school, their diet, or even their health. Again, there are some strategies that my co-workers had to manage their kids' screen time. Number 1, agreeing a set amount of time per day, maybe even more during weekends, but sticking to it, with warnings as the allotted time draws to a close. Even using a timer to make an audible reminder that time's up. You can be flexible if a game is going to exceed that limit, but it's down to your discretion as a parent whether you enforce a hard stop and switch off the device. Number 2, treat game playing time as an actual reward. Link it to household rules or chores and award points for good behaviour. Give none or take away points for bad behaviour. These can be then converted into time on their devices, which means no more points, no more playtime. Simple as that. And lastly, number 3, you could just play with them, which is a great way to bond with your kids and make gaming a much more safer environment, especially for the younger ones. You might even have some fun and gain a new hobby. what's to lose? On that note of bonding, I just want to share a quick, really heartwarming story of how gaming connects us all together, and it's a story about a gamer who used to regularly play racing games with his dad. Sadly, the dad passed away, but many years later the son found the old console and fired up the old racing game for a bit of nostalgia. To his surprise, on one of their favourite tracks, the game still had the dad's fastest lap recorded as a ghost car, a virtual recording of the performance as it was when he was alive. The son could still play with his father, racing around the course, tearing around the corners, trying to beat top speeds, right up until the finish line, where he would slow down and let the ghost car win and disappear off into the ether, just so he could play with his father again another day and not wipe the fastest lap. Doesn't that just warm your heart? Now, one of the more insidious practices in the gaming industry has to be microtransactions and loot boxes. These are designed to elicit more money from the gamer by offering perks, in-game items, cosmetic changes, boosts, etc. for a fee over and above the cost of the game. The first one, downloadable content, or DLC as it's known, is an additional piece of the original game, which in the old days used to be sold as an add-on after the game had been released. Extra missions or levels usually, that kind of thing. These days, DLC is planned during the game's development and is part of the revenue stream that the company expects to obtain by selling this as an extra post-launch. This can range from true expansions to the original game, so missions or levels, sometimes costing £10 to £15, while others are for smaller items as I mentioned before. There are many arguments over whether this practice should exist, but children are exceptionally vulnerable if the child's demand of "it's just £2, Daddy" becomes more and more frequent. While sometimes only a few pounds, these can total a huge amount over time, where the feeling of needing everything can take hold on excitable young minds, desperate for "just £2, Daddy." Loot boxes are a system where you buy a virtual box that has the potential to contain something of really high status or usefulness in the game, but no guarantee that you'll get that thing. Loot boxes are even worse than DLC, and you can find many videos on YouTube lamenting over how disgraceful this practice is for anyone with an addictive personality or a gambling problem. Games are addictive as they are, you don't need to make it worse. If you think that sounds like gambling, well, it is. Just ask the Belgian government, who back in October 2018 declared this practice as such and are looking into a criminal investigation. This was after Electronic Arts refused to modify the loot boxes on their FIFA series of games to comply with Belgian gambling law. Lastly, a season pass, as it's known, is where you are essentially prepaying for access to content that is yet to be released, usually over the coming months. This can be up to, and in cases, over the price of the original game. So just be aware of what you're paying for, signing up to, etc. Needless to say, this isn't just about the safety of your children, but also about the safety of your wallet. A few pounds here, a few pounds there can really tot up, especially if you don't have the spare cash to spend in the first place. You'd have to be completely naive to think that these companies don't know what they're doing. Basic game theory of how games are made to be enjoyable and addictive are in use here by every company, making it more and more difficult to stop playing and, more importantly, stop paying. Well, thanks for getting this far in the video. We're nearly at the end. I really appreciate your time. I really appreciate your attention. Now, I'd like to cover just how you can keep up to date with gaming related news and developments, as I want to give you the tools, not just a lecture on how to keep video games fun and safe. There are so many resources out there, and all the links down in the description, including all the stats that I've quoted. If you want to know more about a game, I would suggest YouTube is often the best place to not only get an opinion on the game itself, but also a visual aid from the video about what is in the game, how it plays, etc. For AAA titles, there's often a media circus leading up to the release, sometimes even years before it comes out. But remember, there's a whole gaming industry out there worth billions of dollars. Of course, they're going to try and tell you to buy it. So basically, just be careful and be informed. I really hope this video has been useful for you. I'd love to hear what you think down in the comment section below. Do you have a question on something I haven't covered? Do you have any advice for parents looking for ideas on how to manage video game time with their kids, etc, etc? Let me know. All that's left to say is thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Okay, love you. Bye bye.